Welcome to Ahlulbayt Live on Ahlulbayt TV. My guest is Haji Maqbul Rahim. I'm Rebecca Masterton, and tonight we are looking at the position of women in the Qur'an, and we're going to be looking at, inshallah, three figures in the, in fact, four figures who are in the Qur'an. Zulaykha, Maryam, and Hazrat Fatima. Also going to be talking about Khadija, salam alayha, as well. Looking at their life stories, the narratives in the Qur'an, and what these lessons can teach us. So do feel free to call in with any questions. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
And thank you for your time as well, for coming here. Last time we were talking about women in the Qur'an, we did talk a little bit about Zulaykha and Hazrat Maryam as well. And I guess we can look at these in more detail. Perhaps one of the first points we can make is that it's interesting that both Zulaykha and Maryam, salam alayha, have such a prominent role in the Qur'an as well. I mean, you pointed out a mirror image, or as if they're kind of opposites.
Yes.
But both of them do have a very important part to play in conveying the message.
That's right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Indeed, if you look at the story of Zulaykha, a lot of aspects come to mind. The first aspect is that here is a case of straightforward lust and seduction. So that we get a situation where Zulaykha, who is herself very pretty and beautiful, she actually sees the beauty of Hazrat Yusuf, and she falls in love with him. And she seeks to gratify her lust, and that is the essential storyline in this particular incident. Now, the thing is that the context within which one perhaps should look at the story of Zulaykha is, and this is something that I have read, that in that particular time there were certain things that were rampant.
Right.
The first that was rampant used to have a lot of power over people, and they used to get people to make offerings and to give wealth, donations of wealth, and they used to become very powerful as a result of that. So it became like the church of the time, who were very, very powerful because of the faith of the believers in the monks. So and one of the other things that also comes out in the movie of Nabi Yusuf is that the monks used to regard women as something that they could utilize themselves, so that we have a situation where there is laxity in morality, and the monks themselves are having illicit relationships with women as really part of a devotion by people worshipping the statues and the false gods. But essentially, it's a kind of thing that the monks were actually expecting, that these women also would satisfy their lust. So that was one. And second thing that comes across in reading about the traditions about, and this is looking at the tafsir, is that fact that the thing that was quite common at that time was to have adultery. Adultery was common at that time, and adulterous relationships between the mistresses and the slaves was not uncommon. It is very common.
I just have to say, I think it was also quite common in Europe. I think even in the 19th century, where there was sort of a huge difference between the wealthy class and the poor class. And I think there are stories of the servants, male servants, being put in very, very difficult positions by their female mistresses.
That's right. So you do have a situation here. As a matter of fact, that reflects in a sense the status and the position that is being accorded to women and to men who are really under the jurisdiction of people who are wealthier, more powerful than themselves. But one thing that came across quite clearly was that adultery was quite common at that time, and it was not so much the fact that Zulaykha was seeking to satisfy or to have an adulterous relationship with her slave, but the fact that she was found out.
Yeah.
So it was more a question of being found out, and I think that indicates the set of total immorality. In other words, these matters were being regarded perhaps like relationships outside marriage.
Yeah.
In the current societies, where one says that these relationships with outside marriage are really function of what I want, or what my heart tells me, or what my nafs is directing me to, and not so much a matter of morality at all. So like in today's time, when we have situations where people are having relationships outside marriage, having relationships maybe in marriage, but adulterous relationships, betraying perhaps the trust of their wives, their wives who are probably not even aware of these things, or become aware later on, and this becomes scandalous. Now this kind of relationship, no one actually asks themselves, look, this is haram. This is against my sacred laws. No one says to himself that, look, this is something I cannot do because it is against my personal sharia. Because now that personal morality, that barometer of rights and wrong, has been pretty much eroded. So in situations which happen today in the society in which we live, the issue really is, again, being found out.
Yeah.
And not the fact that it has taken place, but the fact that it has now been found out. Now it's a public scandal. It's a huge problem both for the husband and the wife.
I was just going to say, it's interesting that you say that at that time it seems to be quite similar to the day and age we're living in today in this part of the world, because it's noticeable that after she is found out, her husband actually says to her, go and ask forgiveness. And that's it.
That's right.
It's not sort of, in a way, it doesn't even come across that he's too shocked and horrified.
Yes, that's right.
So, yeah, perhaps it was just, oh well, misdemeanor.
Yeah, it's something that if we have a society where husbands themselves are able to take other women as their consorts or their mistresses, and the priests are able to take other women of their choice as consorts, as mistresses, where there is a question of surrendering to lust and to sexual pleasures in the various temples that's taking place, then in this society one doesn't quite attach a value to chastity. And chastity becomes like a jettisoned moral value. It's non-existent totally, and people regard these matters as matters of, say, egotism or respect or status. That look, if this affair is found out and everyone laughs because the person with whom the affair is being sought is a slave, now, it's a matter of shame that it's a slave, not the fact that there was a relationship which was illicit in itself,
that's true,
which was the problem.
Because the women, after it gets found out on all the public, the women are gossiping about her. And they say, she was in love with her slave. And that's what is seen as, something demeaning.
Exactly. And the other thing that you read in the tafsir of Agapuya is that after the incidents where Zulaykha actually calls all the women in her peer society to come to her house and does a huge banquet kind of this thing, and she actually gives each person a fruit and a knife, and then asks Nabi Yusuf to actually walk through, suddenly walk through and come through, and each one of them, seeing Nabi Yusuf, actually they cry out, and this the Holy Qur'an says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, فَلَمَّا رَأَيْتَهُ أَكْبَرْنَهُ وَقَطَّعْنَا أَيْدِيَهُنَّ وَقُلْنَا حَاشَ لِلَّهِ. So what they did is when they saw him, and this is Surah Yusuf, ayah number 31, Surah number 12, and when they saw him, they exalted him and they cut their hands. They were absolutely mesmerized by
they thought
his
he was an
beauty.
angel, or
yes,
yeah.
that's right. And they exclaimed, Hasha Lillah is an exclamation that Allah is blameless. This is Subhanallah kind of thing. This is not a human being. And then it goes on to say, وَقُلْنَا Hasha Lillah مَا هَذَا بَشَرًا. This is not a human being. In هَذَا إِلَّا مَلَكٌ كَرِيمٌ. This is an angel, a gracious angel. So after this incident where actually they cut their fingers, Agha says in his tafsir that each one of them, and this is also reflected in the movie of Nabi Yusuf, each one of them separately sent a message to Nabi Yusuf, propositioning him that we would like to have a relationship with you. That is when he said, "Oh my Lord, prison is more dear to me than that to which they urge me."
Yeah. Actually, interesting to read through the Qur'an, because also what comes across in the Qur'an is that Zulaykha is in the room where all the women are. And the reason she's brought him in is because they've just been mocking her and sort of saying, look what you did. And she's kind of bringing him in to prove, okay, you're laughing at me, you see how you react.
That's right.
So she brings him in, and they all sort of just cut their hands. And then it looks like there's a kind of a plot altogether. I guess in the movie, they send messages separately.
Yes.
In the Qur'an, it comes across that they're all plotting together. And then he's kind of, he's just been surrounded. It's like, and he says, Allah, prison is better than this.
That's right.
Take me out of it. And what comes across is the fact that there's a sort of, it's quite calculated. I mean, that's another thing. I suppose that's one thing we could say is interesting about people who follow their desire in this case. Is that we often imagine that, okay, if you follow your desire, you're just sort of blindly going along with it. But it often comes, the intellect often pairs up and sort of plots along with it. I mean, this is what we see with people who want to commit murder, or they hate someone so much they want to murder them. So they still have to kind of calculate how to poison them, how to bleed.
That's right. That's right. That comes across a lot. You see that as Nabi Yusuf grows up. See, we have several stages. The first stage is when he's very young and he's bought by the Amir. The Aziz, he brings him in at home and tells his wife that, look, maybe he'll be a good son for us, like a son for us. So you can see that the Aziz has got very good intentions in bringing this son. He has bought him because he's fascinated by him. As he's being sold in the marketplace, and he's fascinated by this young boy who is being sold as a slave. He brings him home, said, perchance he'll be a good son to us, like a good son to us. So now he's being brought up. So we have a situation where he is being brought up, raised, so to speak, under the eyes, caring eyes of the Aziz and Zulaykha, who then starts developing as he grows up and manifests his beauty, becomes enters adulthood. She actually becomes, she begins to experience that love and lust towards him, which is totally unhealthy, and that should not have been the case. When you regard someone who has actually been brought up before you, and you treat him like your son, and as he's being given more and more position, he's being given more and more status, because his wisdom is quite manifested in various ways, you find that Zulaykha actually starts looking at him in a different eye. So we get a stage comes when she starts regarding him as a possible person to have sexual relationship or an amorous relationship with. That's the point at which she changes from being a person who is looking at Nabi Yusuf as a person, as a slave, as someone who is being brought up benignly, kindly, graciously, to someone who is actually now being regarded as from the inner desire, the lower desires, the animalistic desires. So now she's regarding him separately. Now, when she does begin to look at him differently and behave towards him differently, he also begins to realize that.
Yeah.
So we get instances when she calls him to ask his advice, to do things, etc., all that, and he keeps on rebuffing, he keeps on keeping his distance, he keeps on maintaining his chastity, he keeps on creating a force field of chastity around him so that, you know, she cannot actually enter that. And then she realizes that, that the more she tries to engineer situations where she could have a relationship which is intimate with him, she finds that she's being rebuffed. So actually she decides to call him into her very inner chambers. And the most dramatic scene, the most dramatic situation that does arise is when she actually has the inner chamber, which is after 7 doors.
Wow.
When, you know, so that one enters the innermost, most private chamber or area. You know, it's like her secret place, so to speak. And that place can only be entered after having gone through 7 doors. So you can say pretty guarded place as well. And she engineers a situation through her slave maid, who advises her that you know, we should call him, and she, as he's crossing each and every door, we find that when he enters the very innermost chamber, he finds that all the doors have been locked. Now we find a situation where she actually, and this shows you a point about cunningness, the extreme cunningness.
Yeah, but also, I was just going to say, it's quite. It's abusive as well, because she's looking at him. I mean, we're used to sort of in this day and age where women get objectified a lot. In fact, I would argue in our society that both women and men are encouraged to look at each other as objects rather than as people. And this, what's abusive about this is that she's seeing him as an object. So she's not looking. You know, she's not respecting his position. It's not reciprocal. It's kind of, that's completely neither here nor there for her. She's only determined to get what she wants by whatever means she can.
Yeah. In other words, she regards him as a body.
Yeah.
As an object to satisfy her lust and her desires. She has no regard to his soul, which is so sacred, and praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that he is so deeply immersed in, you know, in ibadah. And in fact, there are times when she goes to secretly watch what he's doing in order to she worships. So you get that. And the thing is that when they were in the inner sanctuary, Nabi Yusuf trapped by the doors being locked, bolted really from outside, then you have a very strange situation. You have a situation where she actually starts declaring her love for him, and she starts saying that she wants to have a relationship with him, and he is absolutely, she's baffled. And then she does one thing more, which is very baffling. She actually, there is a statue of God that she worships, and she goes and puts a scarf or a piece of cloth on the statue, and Nabi Yusuf asks her, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this?" She says, "This is my God, and I worship him. I worship him all the time. So I'm a bit ashamed that he should see me in this particular amorous situation." So at that time, Nabi Yusuf, who is a prophet, he does his tabligh as well. He said, "Your God can be covered up by a piece of cloth, and he will not see you. My God is present everywhere. He's omnipotent, omniscient. He's aware of everything, and there is no way I can hide from him. There is no way I can get away from him. Wherever I will be, he will see me. So by your very own logic, that your God you want to hide from, because you feel this is something shameful that you are doing, there's something wrong about it. How can you expect me to do it when I'm telling you my God watches me wherever He is, wherever I may be, and He'll see me. So that is the tabligh that he does, and you then find a situation where Allah helps him by a miracle, and the miracle is that he is inspired, because when she actually gets to a situation where she actually is going through making the overtures that will result in that kind of relationship, he's inspired that he has to run away.
Yeah.
But he knows that he's locked up. So he's inspired that he should run towards the door. And as he reaches the door, each door unbolts through a miracle. Through a miracle. So he goes out from one door to the second door, to the third door, to the seventh door. And she keeps on running after him. You can see the lust that she has for him. So this is
It's not just that, it's also obsession. And I think this is something, again, quite disturbing that we see even in our society today, where, especially when we see people getting stalked, for example, people become, it's that type of, we can only say obsession, where again, they completely disregard the fact that they are harassing somebody, or frightening them even. So it's bordering on mad in a way.
Absolutely. It's an obscene feud. So that's an extreme, and then you get situations where people who should not really, who starts, telling themselves that they like someone.
Yeah.
Why do they like someone? Because they see someone, as a public figure, and then you suddenly find the person being stalked. And being followed, and all kinds of all kinds of text messages or whatever. All that is being fed by only one thing. There is this inner desire that this person is attracted. The person is attracted to this other person. Whereas, if the idea in the mind was, if I could see this person's soul, and if I could see my soul, and I could see exactly where my soul is at the moment, and in what state of impurity it is, and why am I getting this? Why do I find myself, wanting to go into this gutter of relationship, which is actually a dirty relationship, a relationship that's going to pollute my soul.
Yeah.
Why do I want to do that? That is because the lust has taken over, because shaitan has made it attractive, because shaitan has made him forget, or made the person forget the consequences. So he is already in a state of madness. This is a state of madness, and I think you could really regard as extreme love as madness.
Yeah, I mean, it has been said throughout all the poetry going back centuries, anger and love. So it's very similar.
So when you get into extreme anger, and you get extreme love, and you for the sake of Allah, you restrain it, because that is the way you empower yourself. And your love, you direct it towards Allah, and then direct it through Allah to all the legitimate objects of love that Allah has made halal for you. Your relatives, your parents, your brothers and sisters, your wife, your related people who Allah says you can have relationship of affection and love to them, but not for others.
Yeah.
So, that is...
It's also about self-knowledge, because I think here Zulaykha is someone who is not, she is a bit aware. She's not a part of affecting the soul, obviously, as you've just said. So she hasn't, and the interesting thing is as well in this scenario is that she doesn't deny that he's pure, that he's honest, and that he's trying to preserve that purity. And she actually will say, oh, look at him, he's pure. But it doesn't, in some way she's almost annoyed by it.
That's right.
Oh, look at him, he's,
So she is annoyed by the fact that he doesn't want to descend to her level, that he is there at a level of purity which she is not at. And then when you contrast is the flip side of this is when she at this stage she was a pagan. She used to worship the statues, and she used to pray to the statues. When Nabi Yusuf is put in jail, and then you get a situation where she loses power. Her husband dies, Zulaykha's husband dies, she loses power, she becomes unable, she becomes poor, she cannot take care of herself, she becomes blind. She still keeps on praying to her statue. Still, that you have not done well by me, you have not done good to me, I keep on praying to you, and I'm losing everything. A point comes where she has lost everything, she has gone really rock bottom. And that is where this is meant. But she goes through years and years of being blind and being poor and being muhtaj, being dependent on others, and not really and being totally destroyed in terms of self-esteem, until the time she actually, in that state of loss of self-esteem, she finds God. And when she finds God, and she finds Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and she begins to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because that's when everything else has failed her. She turns to Allah, she turns to the God of Yusuf. She loves Yusuf. Now that love for Yusuf, that lust for Yusuf is turning into pure affection for him, because through that love for Yusuf, she is now able to find love for God. So then she converts her lust into love for God, into muhabbat of Allah, into the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to such an extent that when she is given back her youth, and she's blessed with a marriage to Nabi Yusuf, she refuses to give up God. She simply is immersed in prayers. She tells Yusuf and his other wife that she doesn't want to see anyone. She wants to pray to Allah, because Allah has given us so many given her so much in terms of the bounties. She has now got her beauty, she has got her youth back, and now she cannot but go into the situation of being extremely grateful to Allah and being totally in communion with Allah.
I just wanted to say, though, that this is quite interesting, because we don't find this part of the story in the Qur'an. I mean, there are a lot of traditions, obviously, related to the Qur'an. Do we have any idea where those traditions? Was it from the Ahlulbayt? Was it from the Imams?
I think if you want to look at the various sources, the sources will be tafsir, and this tafsir are based on the ahadith of, for example, the hadith that when she goes to Yusuf, when she meets Yusuf from the crowds, and talks to Yusuf and tells Yusuf that why did you fall? Yusuf asks her, why did you fall for me? Why did you put yourself in such trouble? You really are rock bottom. Why did you go through all that and yet persist in your love for me, even as you are blind, elderly, old, haggard, but yet you love me in this state? That's when she said, I just love you. So I said that is the time when Nabi Yusuf tells her that if you had known of the Prophet who is to come, Prophet Muhammad, Hazrat Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and if you had seen him, you would have realized how much more handsome, how much full of charisma, how much full of personality he is, that you'd fall in love with him. So immediately from the mouth of Yusuf comes the word, the introduction to Nabi, our holy Prophet, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it goes in her heart. And the moment it enters her heart, she begins to love our holy Prophet, just from the description of Nabi Yusuf. And that is the point at which Jibreel comes and tells Nabi Yusuf that Allah has decreed that her youth should be returned, because this is the sadaqah. This is the effect of the love of Ahlulbayt. This is the effect of the love of the Holy Prophet, whom she has not even seen. She has just got an introduction from her lover, Yusuf, and she loves Yusuf so much, she is imbibing everything. And immediately Jibreel says, you have to marry her. She's going to get her youth back, and you're going to marry. She's going to get her eyes back.
Right. So for all those worrying about getting face creams and love of Ahlulbayt is the answer.
Absolutely. Cosmetics.
Yeah.
All the cosmetics can be put away, and all the money can be saved. Just recite namaz shab, you get nur in your face. Recite Qur'an, you get nur in your face. And have the love of Ahlulbayt, and Allah will make your face is very nurani.
Inshallah. True, because, well, it's kind of related to this. When we look at the position of women in the western part of the world, particularly the States as well, it's not so much I don't see in Europe, although it's catching on. And of course we see countries like Lebanon as well, where you know, we look at the lengths that women go to have these kind of facelifts and you know, all these changes that they make, and yet somehow they don't really look younger. They just look stranger, we could say. And I think it's become the norm. You know, almost you see in some cultures, it's almost the norm to see a woman who has an unnatural face because of she's gone to such lengths to kind of try to preserve the youth.
It's as if beauty has become a goddess.
Yeah.
It's become a goddess of beauty. And, you know, people are worshipping beauty. And they're seeking beauty. And they are going through any length, including plastic surgery, including all kinds of cosmetics. And it's fuel industry. It is feeding it, you know. And in fact, if the whole thing is coming, also being propagated by the media, by the fashion magazines, by all these pretty girls who are made to look as perfect models for people to look like. So you get a situation.
I mean, they're not even real.
Exactly,
Yeah.
And now we also know that their pictures are treated with digital makeover, they call it, digital makeover. So you know, you find that even what you see on the screen is not reality. You see a makeover which is digitally done. But if one realizes that beauty, true beauty, is in the heart, you know, there is a very nice dua that you know, says, Hassin, make my Hassin khulqi kama hassanta khalqi. Khulqi is my character, and he is body.
Right.
So make my inside as pretty as you see the outside. Now this dua is actually put on the mirrors, and they are to be recited every time a person, whether a man or a woman, who thinks that he is very handsome or beautiful, and he looks at the mirror and he says, Alhamdulillah, I'm looking so good. So he should say this dua. He should say, oh Allah, make my inside, my inner batin as beautiful or as good as I see myself in the mirror.
And this is another thing we can see where, again, in cultures where the perfection of the inner self is not a priority. And, you know, we can see again how what we could say, disappointment a lot of personalities are. You know, technically they look good for about the first 5 minutes. And then you hear the person speak and you see how they think, how they behave, and it's just you know, there's nothing there. They've got nothing to offer. No depth. There's no development.
So the two things that are really important for any person is the intellectual development. So the mind, the person's contribution of the mind, and the second thing, which is the contribution of the soul, the state of piety and the nobility of the soul. Without these two elements or attributes, then a person is just a shell. Just like, you know, that in Madame Tussauds, you have things that are made of wax, waxwork. that is looks good from the outside, but there's no substance to it. There's nothing. But you need really these two things: intellectual development, intellectual excellence. Now, if one is seeking intellectual excellence and seeking spiritual excellence, then one is achieving something.
Yeah.
Then everything else becomes a way to it. And also the body becomes an instrumentality to achieve that. And one starts paying less attention to the beautification and remaining youthful and remaining very beauty and attractive to people as something not important. Because this again, to be attracted to other thing ideal, and therefore other goes out of the window.
Yeah,
I mean,
but it's not just that as well. There's actually quite a lot of ruthless criteria about what makes someone attractive. So you've got to be light. You can't be kind of, you can't go below a certain shade. Yes. Let's even say, certain type of eyes, certain type of nose, and it means like there's kind of millions of people out there who have excellent, souls, and who by some other criteria might even be considered, alhamdulillah, to be created beautiful. But because, again, man has invented these false criteria, almost like false gods,
exactly.
These false criteria by which someone is going to be measured, it makes a lot of people's lives miserable, really.
Absolutely. And if they just think that however pretty and beautiful a person may be, when you actually bury the person in the grave, that person decays, the body goes. So you see, the body is so impermanent, the body is so very transient, the body is so for this world only.
Yeah.
It's just an instrument, it's just it's a way in which one achieves something which is higher.
Thank you very much. You're watching Ahlulbayt live on Ahlulbayt TV, and we are talking about women in the Holy Quran. We're now going to take a break for Maghrib, so inshallah we will be back in approximately 25 minutes, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Ahlulbayt live on Ahlulbayt TV. I'm Rebecca Masterton. My guest is Haji Maqbul Rahim, and we have been talking about some of the female figures that appear in the Holy Quran, the lessons to be learned from the narratives surrounding them. And we were just talking about Zulaykha, and we are now going to be moving on to talking about Hazrat Maryam, peace be upon her. So if you have any questions or comments, do feel free to call in on the number that appears on your screen. And you said that Hazrat Maryam is quite a good, contrast to Zulaykha, because especially with regard to, as you said before, Zulaykha just bypassed all kind of ethics in her determination to get to Yusuf alayhi salam, whereas Maryam is the opposite. When an angel was sent in the form of a perfected human being or a perfected man, she said, "I seek refuge in my Lord."
Exactly.
So
it's like the reaction when someone sees beauty in that form. Zulaykha saw beauty, and she found it was very accessible in the sense that he was a slave. He was around, she could order him around, and she forced him to be around sometimes, like doing other works, various pieces of work. Yet, in the case, that was the reaction of Zulaykha, which is a very typical reaction of someone who doesn't have regard to the higher self, to higher spirituality, just the lower nafs amara kind of feelings. Whereas Janabi Maryam, Sayyidah Maryam is an example, is an exemplar of chastity. And when she sees beauty, she actually is not, she sees an angel come in the form of Bashar and Sawiya, a perfect man, a perfect in every respect. She immediately comes, her reaction, her inner reaction is that, how come a man is here?
Yeah.
How come a man has actually entered her privacy of mihrab? How come a man has come where no other men are allowed to come? The only person who could come was her maternal uncle, Nabi Zakaria, who was in fact given guardianship of baby Maryam. So her reaction is, this is something that is an affront to my chastity, an affront to my privacy, an affront to my own concept of where of how I should be, located. And clearly, I am not to be located in the presence of another person in a manner where there's no one else, and in privacy of my chamber, my inner place of prayer. So that's her reaction, and she immediately seeks refuge from Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. And in telling the angel that if you persevere, so in that sense you get a sense of tabligh as well.
Yeah, and also appealing to his if he was if he was a human being, it would be appealing to his higher self as well, in the same way that Yusuf appealed to Zulaykha's.
Exactly. So you get a parallel here between the role model of chastity among the men, being Nabi Yusuf, placed in a situation where most other mortals might have succumbed, but he was very, very clear of his focus to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, his own chastity and his own spirituality, and preserving it. And looking at Bibi Maryam alayhi salam, who is a role model for a woman's chastity, where she actually has built through her higher spirituality, her ibadah, her focus on Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, her communion with Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, a kind of a force field, so to speak, around her, which does not allow anything that might even come to the threshold of endangering or compromising her concept of chastity, even nearby.
Also interesting as well is looking at her life, because she engages in a life of seclusion, and in some way this was, I mean, she's a muhadditha, so known as muhadditha, so the angels will speak to her, and that's sort of just one step below, we could say, the status of a prophet.
Yes, right.
And she engages in similar practices to the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family, in that before the angel comes, she's already starting to practice seclusion, and also I noticed an interesting kind of, again, opposites or parallel, is that this confrontation between Yusuf and Zulaykha again happens in her inner chambers, and we've got a similar thing here. Maryam is in seclusion, but it's the opposite scenario. So the angel is coming to her private place as well, but he's coming, she hasn't summoned him or forced him, and she's sort of seeking refuge in Allah. She
sees him as an invasion of her inner sanctuary.
Yeah.
Whereas in the case of Zulaykha, it was a question of engineering a situation where Nabi Yusuf is forced to come under some pretext or the other in her inner chamber. But you see, Nabi Maryam alayhi salam is given to us as an example of a sign of Allah's presence. She is at a level. She's one of the select and the elect persons. She is given as a person, an example of a spiritual status that is almost akin, next to being, as you said, of that of a prophet. She sees angels, and she speaks to angels, and the angel tells her that Allah has decreed that you're going to have a son. And immediately her reaction, her concept of chastity immediately comes to the forefront and says, how can I have a son or a child when no man has touched me? So you see, from her birth, we find that Bibi Hannah, her mother, who has, even prior to her birth, has made a vow that she is going to give in the service of Allah the son that is the child who she thinks is the son is going to be in the service of Allah, serves in the temple, and she finds it's a woman, and she still gives her in the service of Allah in the temple. The whole concept there was to be serving Allah.
Yeah.
And if you want to find out how Allah should be served from the beginning of one's life, so to speak, it is Bibi Maryam who's saying that, look, this is as a perfect example of worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which has seclusion as a very, very important integral part of it. For many other people, seclusion is not an integral part of worship. But for Bibi Maryam, alayhi salam, seclusion is an integral part of her spiritual profile. Because her spiritual profile is one in which she is going to be an example. She is going to be the mother of a miraculous birth of a child. And Allah wanted her to be elevated in physical terms to such a status that no one would ever, in fact, point to her and say, no, she used to mix with men, she used to be among men. So it is not surprising that she has got a child now. It's quite possible that she had a relationship. See, here, Allah wanted every argument that any person could make about her totally refuted from the outset. So He decreed that she should be secluded. And her seclusion was very complete. In the temple, the only person who could come and see her is Nabi Zakaria. And he is the one who used to find that the food has come, out of season fruits are there. And she says, this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah sends her. So Allah has graced her with that bounties and ni'mah. So we find that in her terms of her spiritual status, she is a very high, lofty example of spirituality. She is a siddiqah. She is a truthful person. And the Qur'an says, وَأُمُّهُ siddiqah. So that is testifying that she is a truthful person. She is together with the truth. She is on truth. She is the righteous. She is in the group of people amongst the righteous, amongst the martyrs, amongst the prophets, that group of people, the Siddiqah. And she is also an embodiment, a human embodiment and a symbol of faith. Faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in total dedication to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
There's no wavering in her. It's but also what comes across with her is her innocence as well. So she is totally dedicated. There's no questioning and there's no doubts in her. But also the fact that in her reaction to the angel. It shows her innocence as well, and also the fact that she feels vulnerable when he arrives. So she's not kind of a worldly woman who thinks, oh well, I know how to handle him, and she's aware of her vulnerability.
I think that's absolutely so. You can measure one element, one way of looking at her spirituality is that she sacrificed all her relationships, her relationship with her mother, her relationship with her family, except for her uncle used to come, Nabi Zakaria, to come and visit her. But she had dedicated herself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the central purpose of that dedication, the central purpose of that isolation, the central purpose of that exclusion was to give her such a status of spirituality that could not be challenged by anyone at any level. So that mankind or human beings or historians or anyone looking at her could not have challenged her spirituality. She was way above. She was much more than one is expected to be in life, so to speak. And because she was going to be the mother of Nabi Isa alayhi salam, because she had to imprint her lofty and impeccable morality, her impeccable morality and spirituality, so that it is beyond question at any level that she was decreed that she would be this status. So you find therefore that Maryam alayhi salam is unique. Is unique because no one else has been asked to be in such isolation, has been asked to be in such a...
And also she gives birth in isolation.
Exactly.
As well. There was an interesting, again as a side point, about just a little bit of history. It is said that Prophet Isa alayhi salam was actually born around September. And somebody pointed out that in the Holy Qur'an, she clings to the date palm, and it is said, shake the palm and the ripe dates will fall about you. And someone pointed out that actually the dates are ripened around the time of September as well. So that actually tallies up. I mean, it was only the Romans who changed it to December, but they do say that it's most likely he was born in September. But yes, she's and again here she goes through all that suffering and pain in isolation, and interesting to the point as well where because of her inexperience, she's just saying, I wish I was something forgotten, just expressing how difficult this experience was for her.
That's right. I mean, in fact, one can also make a point that the reason for her isolation, and also in terms of her birth of the child, Nabi Isa alayhi salam, was because this was all a prelude to Nabi Isa's introduction. And Nabi Isa actually vindicates his mother by saying, Ana Abdullah Tani al-Kitab wa Ja'alani Nabiyya. So he actually speaks, because when she actually has given birth to Nabi Isa, she, having gone through this miraculous birth, she's asking herself, what am I going to tell the people who are going to raise their accusations at me that I have been immoral and unchaste, and that is what was worrying Bibi Maryam alayhi salam so much, the accusation of being unchaste, being immoral rather than anything else. And therefore, when she's told that, and the Quran says that she's told to tell them that you have vowed to keep quiet. So you gesture that you can't speak because you have vowed to keep quiet, to be silent, and point towards the baby in her arms. Say, ask him. So through the gesticulation, she gestures. She says that to the people, and Nabi Isa actually testifies. So we have a prophet testifying as to the chastity, the innocence, the spirituality of a woman, his mother, albeit his mother, but a holy prophet and a great prophet, one of the Ulul Azm prophets, testifying to a woman's chastity, spirituality, and loftiness in status.
I was just going to say, as well, just a point to make, the similar issue with regards to the narrative between Musa and Khidr alayhi salam, where Khidr alayhi salam appears, I mean, he's following the commands of Allah, but he appears to be doing things that are contrary to what appear to be right. And similarly with Hazrat Maryam, where it's quite interesting, the command of Allah, the plan of Allah, on the surface looks to her and the people around her like a total disaster. I mean, this is something terrible. And they say to her, Maryam, you have done something terrible. When actually there's this greater kind of wisdom behind
this
what's
is like
happening.
an out of the ordinary event that doesn't take place normally. And it is a miraculous sign. Allah wanted to proclaim Hazrat Isa's coming as an ayah, as a word, as a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and a miraculous sign. So one can regard the time that Bibi Maryam alayhi salam spent in the temple, in the mihrab, in ibadah, purifying herself, raising her lofty status to that level of spirituality, her getting the ni'mah from Jannah, the fruits from Jannah, the food from Jannah, her being able to talk with the angels, all of that is a prelude to a miraculous sign that is going to overwhelm the world, and that is the coming of Hazrat Isa alayhi salam. And the whole thing, therefore, is seen, everything that Maryam alayhi salam is asked to do is what is not asked of any other woman.
Yeah.
No other woman is asked to isolate herself and not be married.
And it was very unusual, and as you said, for a woman to be dedicated to the temple as well. So right from the start, things were sort of and it's quite interesting because it's like, again, the test is following the command of Allah rather than just following religious customs, we could say.
Exactly, and the contra-example that you gave of Nabi Khizr and Nabi Musa was this, that actually Khizr was indicating a greater knowledge, which Nabi Musa didn't know, because the context in which Nabi Musa is asked to meet with Khizr is to actually become aware that his knowledge is not perfect.
Yeah.
And that there is a perfect knowledge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he will get a manifestation of. He'll get some manifestation of. So you get, for example, a situation where a hole is made in a boat, the wall being repaired in a village where, in fact, in a town where people are not even hospitable to them. They don't even offer them food. And the killing of a boy who apparently had not done any harm to anyone. So these were things that Allah had decreed. So it was a way in which Allah was showing His signs that to protect that boat of this poor person from a tyrant king, a hole had to be made so that it should look defective, and he would bypass it. He would not take it. To protect an orphan's treasure, the two orphans who were still young, and to protect the treasure, a wall had to be built. So those two are easily explained. But the third one is the one in which the killing of a boy who on the face of it was innocent of anything, nothing had happened. That requires a philosophical explanation. If Allah had intended, He could have given, because the rationale that Allah tells about that particular act through Khizr is in fact that this boy was going to be very bad and ungrateful to his parents, and he would not be good to him.
Okay, thank you very much. And we've just been talking about Hazrat Maryam, salam alayha. You're watching Ahlulbayt Live. We're going to take another short break, so see you again, inshallah, after a few minutes. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamualaikum, welcome back to Ahlulbayt Live on Ahlulbayt TV, broadcasting across the world, and greetings to all our viewers in all the different time zones. We have just been talking about Hazrat Maryam, peace be upon her, and we are going to conclude tonight's program with, of course, talking about Hazrat Fatima, salam alayha, looking at her in greater detail in order to try to understand her, although it is famously known that her inner meaning, the meaning of Fatima, is concealed, and that's the meaning of her name as well.
That's right. In fact, this is so opportune moment to be talking about Fatima alayhi salam, because these are the ayyam of Fatimiyya in hadith. There is one hadith that is quoted from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, and he says, this is quoted by Abdul Azim Hassani. He says that Fatima alayhi salam has 9 names with God, the Most High: Fatima, Siddiqa, Mubaraka, Tahira, Zakiya, Radiya, Mardiya, Muhaddisa, and Zahra. And then the Imam, our sixth Imam, asks, do you know the reason behind the name Fatima? This Rawi is Abdul Azim Hassani. He's saying, I said, inform me, my master. He said, she has been isolated from evil. And he quotes these words, Futimat min shar, min al shar. Futimat min al shar. She has been totally isolated, protected from, freed from shar. Then he said,
from evil.
From evil. And then he said, Imam says, if the commander of the faithful had not married her, she would not have had an equal for marriage until the day of judgment from Adam and after him. So there would have been no one who could have been a kuf, who could have married her. And in terms of the various names that are reported, like the other names that have been given as reported by Abu Ja'far Qumi, is that her names are Fatima, Batul, Hassan, Hurra, Sayyida, Adhra, Zahra, Hawra, Mubaraka, Tahira, Zakiya, Radhiya, Mardiya, Muhaddisa, Maryam al-Kubra, Siddiq al-Kubra, and in the heavens she is known by the name Nuriya and Haniya.
Beautiful.
So these are the various different names that by which she is known. And there is a beautiful hadith that been quoted, again from the sixth Imam, our Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, as to why she was called Zahra. So she was called Zahra because whenever she stood in her place of prayer, her luminance, her nur, appeared just as brilliant to the dwellers of the heavens as the stars appear to the people of the earth. So a column of nur, of brilliance that would actually ascend to the skies and would be so intense, it would be like a star. And the people in the heavens who lived there would actually, the angels would see it as a star from earth. So that is the reason why it's called Zahra. Then there is another, the other Imam Sadiq alayhi salam has also said she was called Muhaddisa because the angels would descend down to the earth and converse with her in the same manner as they used to converse with Maryam, Bibi Sayyidah Maryam alayhi salam. And they would say to her, "O Fatima," she would tell her, the angels would tell her, "God has chosen you and purified you and preferred you over all the women of the world. O Fatima, obey your Lord and prostrate to him and pray with those who pray." These are the words that are used for Bibi Maryam alayhi salam. You know, she's told to be among kind, you know, these people who pray, people who prostrate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is narrated that she would talk to them, to the angels, and they would talk to her until one night she asked, "Isn't Maryam, the daughter of Imran, the one who has been chosen as the leader of all the women of the world?" So she, Fatima alayhi salam, asked this question. And they replied, "She was chosen as the leader of the women of her time. But God has chosen you to be the leader of the women of your time as well as her time as well as all the time. So you are the best of the women of all times."
Amazing, subhanAllah. It's interesting about Hazrat Fatima salam alayha because as we say, and as the Imams alayhim salam have said as well, that her inner meaning is concealed, just like her grave is also concealed as well. And what has come down to our possession of her sayings and teachings as well is not easy to find. And yet we can see through the teachings of the Ahlulbayt alayhim salam this again figure who is very difficult to approach in terms of sort of you know, as the Imam say, understanding her sort of greatness.
That's right. Indeed, it's very difficult to understand the greatness, the spirituality, to have the ma'rifah of who Bi Fatima alayhi salam is. If you look at it, she spent 18 years of her life. During the 18 years of her life, she spent at least 7-8 years in Mecca. And during that period, you have a situation where she sees the time when there's a social economic boycott of Banu Hashim in Shaybi Abi Talib. She sees her mother die as a result of the deprivation that she suffered through the 3 years of being deprived of food, being deprived of health, being deprived of nurturing. And she also saw her father, the Holy Prophet, being oppressed, being persecuted. Entrails of camels would be thrown on or sheep would be thrown on his head as he is doing sajda, as he is praying, and she would come out and she would come and remove the dirt from him, and she would kiss him. She would tend to his wounds, to the bleeding that he would suffer as a result of being struck by stones, or his feet being full of blood because of the various thorns being placed on his way. So we find that Bi Fatima alayhi salam, from a Zahiri point of view, you find that she has lived a very short period of time. In Makkah, she saw a lot of persecution, and she saw a lot of difficulties which her father faced. In Medina, she actually finds that the Holy Prophet has to fight many battles. And in Uhud, when the Holy Prophet suffered wounds on his face and his mouth, we find that Bi Fatima alayhi salam is there to tend to his wounds. So Bi Fatima alayhi salam is very much a part of the Holy Prophet. There is a saying, a prophet is Fati Minni. Fatima is a part of me. And we have to understand that that particular tradition of the Holy Prophet, the saying of the Holy Prophet, is not only saying that she is part of my flesh, that she is part of my body, but indeed that she is part of Nabuwa.
Right. Yeah. Good point.
There is a hadith that I have heard stated from our Imams that like our Imams have said, that in the same way as we are hujjah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon you, upon the world, upon humanity at large, Bi Fatima alayhi salam is hujjah from Allah upon us, upon the Imams. So you see that she is part of Nabuwa. She is part of the mission of the Holy Prophet. She is an example for the women until the day of Qiyamah. She is an example in every respect. If you look at the ziyarah of Bi Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, there is, and this is the ziyarah, this is in Mafatil Jinan, Sheikh Abbas Qumi. It says, وَأَنَّ مَنْ سَرَّكِ فَقَدْ سَرَّ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. And I testify that whoever pleases you, makes you happy, sarrakis, pleases her, has pleased the Holy Prophet. And then it says, وَمَنْ جَفَاكِ فَقَدْ جَفَى رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. Whoever has opposed you, or whoever has opposed her, has opposed Rasulullah. وَمَنْ أَذَاكِ فَقَدْ أَذَى رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. Whoever has hurt her, has hurt Rasulullah. وَمَنْ وَصَلَكِ فَقَدْ وَصَلَ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. Whoever has loved her, has loved Rasulullah. وَمَنْ قَطَّعَكَ فَقَدْ قَطَعَ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. And whoever has, whoever has broken relationship with you, these are all addressed to Bi Fatima alayhi salam in the ziyarah, has indeed renounced Rasulullah. Who has renounced you, broken relationship with you, has broken relationship with Rasulullah. And then he said, لِأَنَّكِ بِضْعَةٌ مِّنْهُ. Why? لِأَنَّكِ بِضْعَةٌ مِّنْهُ. Because you are the part of him.
Yeah.
Or Rasulullah. وَرُوحُهُ. And also part of his joy and his spirit. الَّذِي بَيْنَ جَنْبَيْهِ. And permanently attached to his body and soul. So you are part of him, body and soul. The spirituality of Bi Fatima alayhi salam is to be understood through the spirituality of the Holy Prophet.
Yeah.
Alayhi salam.
Also, since we're talking about women in the Qur'an, you know, people might say, well, where is Hazrat Fatima in the Qur'an? But of course, the Kawthar, and it's not just in the traditions of the Ahlulbayt, but in all traditions, Surah Kawthar was revealed with regard to her as well.
Yes, Kawthar, inna a'tainaka al-Kawthar. Indeed, we have granted you abundance. We have granted you. That has been interpreted to be a direct reference to Bi Fatima alayhi salam, through whom there is abundance of the continuation.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the whole surah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, inna a'tainaka al-Kawthar, fasalli li rabbika wanhar, inna shaniyaka huwa al-abtar. If you look at the whole surah, indeed your enemies who are taunting you, that you are abtar, that you are without tail, that you are without any descendants, that you don't have anyone else, you don't have a legacy. Indeed, we have granted you Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, through whom you will get, through whom all the imams come, through the hujjah of Allah come. So this is great multitude and abundance of goodness and khair that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted through Bi Fatima.
And it's also an abundance, we could say, of knowledge, you know, of power and knowledge. When we look at the stature of her progeny, even though the imams born of her are few, their stature and the knowledge that they transmitted is sort of, you know, obviously far out. Yeah,
they are the legacy. They are. You see, one of the ways in which one should look at this is she is the link. So if you look at Hadith Kisa, she is the link. Hum Fatimatu wa abuha wa ba'luha wa banuha. Everything is being identified through Fatima. She is Fatima and her father and her husband and her children. So you see, she is a central link. So if you look at the Noor of Ahlulbayt as a divine link, divine power, a power that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent, a Noor, a light that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent, which is to guide, to be the divine light of guidance sent to humanity at large. The anchor is Bi Fatima alayhi salam. The link is Bi Fatima. And you will be fashion, she is there giving support to her father. When prophethood is being challenged in the various battles, she is there to give support to her father, to Nabuwa, to provide. And in fact, after the death of the Holy Prophet, she rises to defend prophethood's legacy, which is imama. She rises to defend that. And she does tabligh. She goes from door to door after Saqifa, when the Khilafat has been usurped by people other than those who have been designated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the Holy Prophet. She goes from door to door, reminding people about Ghadirakum, reminding people that didn't the Prophet, didn't the Holy Prophet, didn't my father indicate to you that after him the successor is the Holy Prophet, is Imam Ali alayhi salam. So because the legacy of prophethood, the protection of prophethood is imama. And imama was to be the protector of Risala. And she was therefore protecting prophethood and imama. And you find that
She was the shield, really.
She was the shield. She was the shield in every respect. People say she went for fadak. She went to ask for her right in respect of fadak. Fadak was a garden, the orchard, the land that was granted by the Holy Prophet in his lifetime. And no one else had any right to it except her. And the Holy Prophet granted it to her as a result of a command from the Holy Qur'an. He said, give the right to your kith and kin, who deserve it. Now we find that, why did Fatima alayhi salam go to the extent of going to the darbar or to the court of the first Khalifa to make a claim for this, what would otherwise be regarded as a material piece of land, wealth.
And it has been portrayed like that in quite a few narratives, that she was disgruntled, she was discontented, with the decision. So it portrays her as someone who's, astaghfirullah, like not happy with, sort of quibbling over some land, and that the noble first Khalifa is trying to kind of guide her to, the right direction.
That's right. See, she in that the sermon of Fadak, she makes a stand for Sharia. She makes a stand for righteousness. She makes a stand for obedience to the Holy Prophet. She makes a stand for saying, you have now forgotten what the Holy Prophet has taught you over the period of 23 years. In no time, after his death, you simply have gone away. And she is actually doing tabligh. She is reminding people that where are they going astray?
In a similar way, we can see now with Yusuf too, Zulaykha, again, as you said, with Hazrat Maryam as well, when the angel came, and all the people through the line of prophecy, when they are faced, with these challenges from other people, they always try to appeal to someone's better. Even Imam Hussein alayhi salam did that. Rather, they don't engage in arguments. They're trying to appeal to the better part of the person.
Exactly, and in fact, it is narrated. It is said that if one wants to study eloquence, the sermon of Fatima alayhi salam is such a huge pearl, such a great pearl. In literature, in terms of eloquence, in terms of wisdom, in terms of indicating to people how could people, trying to explain to people exactly what has happened to them, and where they are going wrong, what they need to do, what is the consequence of where they are heading. And Fatima alayhi salam does that tabligh because she is now doing so as, so to speak, a representative of the Holy Prophet. The moment the Holy Prophet has died, they have now started deviating. So she goes to remind them. And she continues to do that. When the people, when the ruling regime decides to send people to her house to take Imam Ali to force bay'ah on him, she defends him. She refuses to let them in, and she refuses to let go of Imam Ali alayhi salam. So you can see she's defending Imama. She's defending her Imam of the time, and she does it with everything. And she
actually, we can see again an echo of that from when she was a child. Cleaning the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him and his family, of what was thrown at him. As well, cleaning him in battle. So all the way up from when she was a little girl, that is actually the role that she's taken.
Yes, and she, she goes to the extent of defending Imam Ali alayhi salam and telling the people that, will you actually enter my house without my permission? They said yes. So will you enter it when Hassan and Hussein are here, the grandsons of the Holy Prophet, whom you know about? He said, yes, we will do that. And when she refuses to yield Imam Ali, so to speak, they crash the door upon him, and she sacrifices the baby in her stomach, who dies, Muhsin, who dies as a result of being struck with the door. So you find that Fatima alayhi salam has the sacrificing spirit throughout her life. From the day one, she is manifesting that love for the Holy Prophet, love for righteousness, love for goodness, love and sacrifice in the way of Allah.
Also, we could say she's got quite, obviously the spirit of a warrior. Really, she's got that. She's got that. Fighting for what is right. She's not someone who would sit timidly in a corner. She'll confront those who do wrong as
exactly
well.
And one of the paradoxical things is that she, one of her laqab, one of her names is Siddiqa Shahida, and this Shahida here means being a witness to the deeds of others on the Day of Judgment.
Right.
And so her status is one of being a witness to the deeds of others. So we have someone whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted such a lofty and high position that when on the Day of Qiyamah, she is going to be the person who will intercede for others.
Yeah.
She is going to testify as to other people's deeds, and she is going to manifest her laqab of this Hawraun Insiya, an angel in the shape of a human being in the Day of Qiyamah.
Thank you very much. It's fitting that we conclude this discussion with Hazrat Fatima, salam alayha, and we pray that people will, in a rational way, just take time to think a bit more deeply about her and her life, because it has been dismissed or twisted by so many reports. So inshallah we can try to endeavour to do that. And I want to thank Haji Maqbul Rahim. Inshallah, thank you for watching, and I will be back again on Friday. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.